Stories that matter. The journey of life from birth to death is an extraordinary trip, sometimes filled with great joy and excitement, but at other times filled with pain, sorrow, and disappointment. Stories That Matter shares both extremes with you. Sometimes our stories will make you feel very happy, but the journey of life is not all happiness. Other times, the journey of life will make you feel sad, for all of us have experienced both extremes. Stories That Matter will begin right after the break with a story that will touch your heart in the journey of life.
Welcome to Stories That Matter. I'm your host, Doug Thompson, with my special guest, and it is a special guest. This is Chaplain Dale Bailey from the facility in Ellsworth, and by facility I'm talking about the prison.
Yes, sir.
And so you're the chaplain. How long have you, are you ordained?
Yes, sir.
And tell me your preparatory education for that.
We attended Baptist Bible College, Springfield, Missouri, and then went to Salina, did an internship at a church there.
Which church?
Grace Baptist.
Sure.
On Crawford Street.
Yeah. How long were you there?
Yeah, about 6 months.
And how long were you at Springfield?
And, 4 years.
4 years.
Finished college 4 years. Yeah, we had my wife and 3 children, so we moved right on through college and came back. So,
is that right?
Yeah.
Did you go from like, what were you doing something before you went to the Bible college?
I was 25 years old when I come to know Christ as my Lord and Savior, and about a year and a half later, he called me to ministry, so we packed up our family and went to Bible college.
Okay. Was there some, tell me about the transition from not knowing Christ to knowing Christ. How did that occur?
Well, about 6 months prior to coming to Christ, wife and I had come up with a lot of problems. And our lives without Christ had led us in separate directions, and life was just a mess. We had our 3 children. And then about 2 weeks before I came to Christ, I was sitting at home one night at my dining room table. We have 3 children, they were in bed. Wife was gone, and the phone rings, 10:30 at night. It was my 3rd grade school teacher from Winfield, Kansas, where I went to school. He and I become good friends over the years, and he kind of became a father figure to me. And he called out of nowhere, and he said, "How's it going, Dale?" And I just poured it all out. I said, "It's not going good." He let me finish, and then he started reading the Bible to me over the phone, just started with Scripture. And I knew immediately what was wrong with my life. I did not have God. So.
Yeah, and you knew, as in retrospect, as you look back on it, God had him call.
Yeah.
At 10:30 when you would be available, and the kids would be in bed.
I hadn't
knew the
talked
wife
to him,
was gone, so
Yeah.
And you had that conversation.
And I hadn't spoke to him in 3 years, so he didn't have a clue, and I didn't, but God knew what was going on.
So your wife came back, and then you said, "Honey, I got something to tell you."
We both plugged in and got involved in the church, began teaching classes and doing things with youth groups, and then God called us in ministry at the same time. And so we said, well, I didn't grow up in church. She did, but I didn't. So I said, I better go to Bible college. And my pastor took me down there and showed me a school. And we went through that school and then came back, did an internship under him. And then we moved out to Ellsworth and planted a church out there and pastored it for almost 6 years.
What was the name of the church?
Smoky Hill Baptist Church.
Is it still going?
It's still going. Yeah,
awesome.
In fact, they celebrate their 20th anniversary this week.
And so you're going to get to come out as being part of that that history of the church.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So tell me, how do you then wind up at the prison in Ellsworth?
Just from being involved in the community and coaching sports and knowing some of the staff up at the facility, they wanted to put on a second chaplain, a full-time chaplain, so they called me and they said, "Dale, get up here and apply." Well, I did, and they ended up hiring a different gentleman that time, but a year later another opening came up, and they said, "Get up here and apply."
Okay.
So I did, and there, 2003 of August 2003, I went in there as chaplain. So.
Well, how many chaplains are at the facility now?
We have 2 full-time chaplains right now.
Wow. Mm-hmm. So when you got to the prison at Ellsworth, did you know anything about the prison at Ellsworth other than here it is?
Actually, I had spent one night in the prison. They had a fundraiser for the Spiritual Life Center that they were building, and they allowed public to pay $25 a person. You come in and stay the night. We played games all night and ate food, and I took my son in, preteen son at the time. I said, "Let's go into prison and spend a night. I want him to experience that."
Well, I don't know. He didn't get to see the real prison, though, did he?
No, but I did have him lock us in a cell for an hour.
Did you?
We sit there and played cards. So.
And then pretty soon you sort of get to looking around like, well, this is kind of fun, but now I'm ready to go.
Yeah, it's time to go home in the morning.
Got you.
Yeah.
So you started at Ellsworth, and there were some programs already in place, or did you implement some programs from your second chair?
Oh, when I started, they had some great programs already going. And there was an IFI, men's program, faith-based program going.
What's the IFI mean?
Interchange Freedom Initiative as part of Prison Fellowship Ministries. And they had that going where they take them through different faith-based curriculums and prepare them for release, because those are men that would be released at some point pretty quickly.
Okay. So it was kind of a deprogramming that you're going to go from the correctional facility back into the public.
Correct.
Had they been involved in any faith-based programs, or this was just for everybody, general population that would be leaving over in a certain period of time?
Well, they were general population inmates, but they were selected for the program with certain requirements, such as how much time is left and where they would transition out to, things like that.
Okay, so even if they hadn't been involved in a faith-based program, they would go through that class?
No.
No, so it was just for those that were in a faith-based program.
Yeah.
We're going to have to cut away and take a break. We're going to be right back. You're watching Stories That Matter with Chaplain Dale Bailey. Welcome back to Stories That Matter. I'm your host, Doug Thompson, with my special guest, Chaplain Dale Bailey from the prison in Ellsworth. And when we cut away for break, we had just talked about how you wound up at the prison in Ellsworth, and that you and your preteen son spent one night in the prison, and it was part of a kind of a fundraiser.
Yes, sir.
And you had a good time for that period of time, but you also had a period when you shut off everything and said, you know, we're sitting here for an hour. And so now you can kind of get a little bit of the feeling of what it's like to be 24/7 times multiple years to be in that setting. And so now you move to the point of you're working full time as the chaplain, as one of the chaplains there. Tell me about the programs that are in existence now.
The programs now, they were building the Spiritual Life Center when we first came in. And so we finished up that building, and that was in 2003 when I came in. And August 2004, we opened the Spiritual Life Center.
Now, the Spiritual Life Center, I've been to it a couple of times, and you gave me the privilege to come out and talk to the offenders, and I enjoyed it. It was I've come back from there, and I speak at other churches on occasion, fill in for some pastors, and here's what I saw from outside coming into it. And I'm a judge too, so and I'm an attorney, and so when I came back from there and I spoke, maybe the next week I filled in for Pastor in Chapman, and what I told him, I said, when I got out there, I said I didn't know what to expect from the people, and I said, so the way I handled it was, I said, let's get the booing done right away. I'm an attorney, and boo, you know, and it's okay, and I'm a judge, louder boos, you know, and I'm a sinner. And then there was immediately cheers. Yeah. And so, but I told the congregation when I came back, I said, here's what I saw when I was there. I said, there was tears running down their faces. And there was more amens and hallelujahs than any church that I have been in. That I can recall anyway. And I said, these were people who were broken, who were searching for the Lord. Yeah. And I said, what a fantastic program that these folks here who have made mistakes in their lives, and every one of us, and I was talking to the people in the congregation and to myself, I said, every one of us have made mistakes. And I said, but these folks had made mistakes that got them put into that sort of a facility, and now they're coming to know the Lord. And I said, there's some really, really good people who are leading and guiding them, like you and others out there, and it's tremendous. It's absolutely tremendous. Yeah. Tell me about the program. Tell me about the concept. If I'm a prisoner coming into that spot and I'm nowhere, but the guy in the cell next to me says, hey, I'm going to Spiritual Life Center. Yeah. Yeah, well, what's that about? How do I even get into it? How does that work for the person who's in there that doesn't know anything about it? Yeah. They've been through the orientation, and they got it. They understand the rules about you don't do this and you don't do that. Yeah. But now something that may be touching their heart, just like the third grade teacher that called you.
Right. Yeah, and it takes the men that are involved in Spiritual Life Center. They do a great job back in the pods, out on the yard, at the meal line, of witnessing and inviting guys over. And, you know, when the guy gets you alone, they say, you know, I need to change. I want to go a different direction. Go see Chaplain. Go to Spiritual Life Center. Get involved. And they bring them over. And because all those guys have families on the outside. You know, they have a wife, children, or maybe parents. People love them, and people that they've destroyed those relationships, and they want to restore those. Everybody's seeking God at some point. You know, they get broken down enough, they have nothing left. Now God has their attention, and He can draw them in. and they'll listen to him. And so they get involved, and then things begin to turn around their life. They begin to work a job, maybe take care of their family. God restores some of those relationships, and they begin a whole new path where it starts with the heart, starts with faith. And then we start working on the mind, renewing the mind. You know, how does God want you to be a man? How do you be a son? How do you be a dad? How do you be a husband?
Is that one-on-one sessions that you
we do
have?
a lot of one-on-one counseling with guys and disciple them, bring them through that. We also have great core of volunteers that come in. Public involvement is a tremendous part of the success at Ellsworth Correctional, as well as any facility.
Yeah.
Having volunteers from the public come in from the outside, such as yourself, when you come in and speak to them, they say, wow, somebody really cares about me. An attorney really cares about me. A judge really cares about me. He wasn't just being mean to me.
Yeah.
You know, that says a lot to these men.
Yeah.
And in fact, the morning you came in, there was one gentleman that stood up, and he started walking out. And I was in the back hallway, and he come out, and he said, I can't take it, Chaplain. I have to go. I'm not listening to a judge. I said, no, he has something to say. And so I pulled him aside in my office. We sit down a few minutes while you were still preaching out there. And I said, look, just give it the rest of this hour and see what God does with this. And he couldn't argue with that. So he went back out and sat down. Now I see him all the time. He's involved. He's in education. He's taking college classes right now. He's doing very well.
Good.
And it's all because he had to wrestle with some of the anger he had inside of him at the system, at a judge somewhere, at an attorney somewhere. Yeah. You know, he had to get past that and say, all right, it's time to move on and prepare his life. So that's what he's doing now. He's doing very well.
Was he at the Christmas celebration when I was out?
He was not there that night. He was there the night before when we did it for the population. He was there listening to it and enjoyed it.
How do you know the difference between somebody who just is feeding you the line that they think you want to hear so that I can get out of that cage that I'm in and I can go into this spot, even if I just sit there and I'm not buying it, I sit there with my arms folded. How can you tell the difference? Or can you? Well,
you kind of have to wait on God to work on their heart, you know, first of all. But usually you can tell if a gentleman's sincere, he's going to say, look, this is my fault. I put myself here. I need to change. When God gets a man at that point, he can really begin to make some change in his life. And we have a lot of things going to help him do that. A lot of mentors, a lot of programs going on to help him. So.
You know, I noticed a distinct difference when I went out and spoke at the Ellsworth facility as opposed to other spots that I have spoken at, and not any prisons. But, you know, whether it's been a crowd of people that are inmates in a local facility or something, and the conversation is different in those cases because I'll have people come up to me and say, you know, I was wrongfully convicted, and there will be multiple of those stories. Or I had bad attorney or a dumb judge or whatever they want to say.
Right.
But out at this facility, I didn't have one person, and there was a sizable crowd. I didn't have one person come up to me and say, I shouldn't be here. I was wrongfully. There wasn't one person who did that. Our conversations on the one-on-one was, thank you for being here, and like you said, thank you for caring. You know, thank you for taking the time, and I could see the sincerity in their faces and hear the sincerity in their voices. It's an amazing facility, an amazing job you've done. We're going to have to cut away, and we're going to take a break. But when we come back, we're going to visit with Chaplain a little bit further, and you're watching Stories That Matter. Welcome back to Stories That Matter. I'm your host, Doug Thompson, with my special guest, Chaplain Dale Bailey from the prison in Ellsworth, and thank you so much for being here.
You're very welcome.
When we cut away to break, we were just talking a little bit about you know, the facility, and I had the privilege to come out and speak, and how the prisoner makes that transition from being angry that I am here, that it's somebody else's fault, to it's my fault. I put myself into this spot. And you know, one of the things that I do on the bench quite a bit, I will tell somebody that, you know, more younger than older. I have a different speech I give for the older ones, but for the younger one, I'll say, you know, I've been in your spot. I've been there. And so I said, when I've had a bad night, stupid night, did something I shouldn't have done, I said, I would go in, as a young man, I'd go in, I'd look right in the mirror, right at my own eyes, and I would say, who are you? Who are you? And if I had to say that 10 times, I knew who I was.
Yeah.
And I knew that what I had done or was involved in wasn't really me. and so it would cause me to reevaluate myself. And I suspect that most people go through that. And as I gave that example in the courtroom to many people, I trust that they would say, well, you know, if the judge has done that, then, you know, maybe that works for me too.
Yeah.
Because he's no different. And I always say prayers before I go in and to do my judging work, and I'll always say, Lord, I know that the biggest sinner in the courtroom is going to be the one on the bench.
Yeah.
And give me the wisdom to know what to do, how to do it, when to do it, and a few other things. What do you go through in this process? Because there's a lot of stress on you. And when I went out for the Christmas celebration, I can positively guarantee you, just like I did before, that the chaplains are very, very well respected. I mean, they think the world of you guys because you're doing obviously committed for them.
Sure.
How does this work for you?
Yeah, well, it gives them hope. And so they respect what we do. They love what we do. The offenders built the building with detail sergeants leading the way and teaching them. And they take great care of the building, the Spiritual Life Center itself, but they also take great care of the programs we run. Chairs moving around, furniture. There's a lot of activities, a lot of tour groups come through. Barton College uses our building. Re-entry uses it. A lot of different people use our building. We have staff events in there. And so the men know this is a special place, the Ellsworth Correctional itself. But it takes the whole team. It's not just chaplains and the Spiritual Life Center staff. It's security. They're a huge part of it, helping us get outside people coming in to the Spiritual Life Center. That's tremendous. It's the warden, you know, warden on down is what it takes. Unit team counselors, case manager counselors, re-entry staff, medical staff, everyone's involved. Everyone loves the Spiritual Life Center. And so the guys inside have embraced it as well. They know this is a great chance for them to change and have some hope. And so that's what it is. It's a symbol of hope for these men. And they take great care of it and they protect it.
They do. It's a beautiful facility, and they do. I didn't realize that they physically built the structure.
They did, yes.
And that's awesome. And it takes that sort of a support team from the warden on down, because if he says no,
it's no.
Then it's a no. His job's to protect the facility, protect the offenders, and everything I've seen about the facility, it's just first class. It's well maintained, and
thank you.
And you know, it's just incredible. Do you get offenders who get out and come back to the program?
Certainly, yeah. We have offenders that get out, do very well, and they come back as volunteers, or they come back as guests for dinner theater or the concert sometimes. And they're involved both inside and on the outside. Some of them become mentors of other men who are getting out of prison. They will mentor them one-on-one through our Mentoring for Success program.
Well, I bet that's tremendous.
That's
got to be such a feeling of thank you, Lord, for ever putting me in this position to be able to do that, to have somebody who you mentored to on the inside and have seen that person go through the progress and the transition that they've made, and then have them come from that outside and walk back into that place.
Yes.
And it's got to bring some feelings back to them.
It makes my day when that phone rings and it's a gentleman who's on the outside doing really well. So it does. Love to speak with them. So.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. And then to have them come back in and get up and talk to the offenders and say, I was there. Yeah. I sat in this chair over here. My cell was that one over here.
Yeah.
I sat there for 18 months before I decided to come over because somebody kept telling me, and they didn't give up on me. Yeah. And then when I came in, here's what I saw.
Yeah.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It is. It's amazing. They're doing great things when they get out, too. So.
From your pastor days, what's the Lord say about the prisoners?
Come to me.
And he never wants us to forget about them. He wants us to go back and to reach the lost.
That's
extend that hand out. Do you feel that that's what you do when you're in part of this? That it's just like what the Lord said. I'm extending that hand out to help you back up out of the trench that you got into.
When no one else is extending a hand, it's an opportunity for God to do that through us, and we love it. It's what we do every day.
Awesome. Tell me about the family now. You had we talked before, you was 25. You had 3 kids. What's become of the kids?
Oh, they're all grown and on their own, doing really well. And
they
2
still
of them
live
are married.
Close to you?
2 of them up near Kansas City, and 1 in Ellsworth has her own place and has a great job there. And so she went to the Air Force for a while and came home. So
awesome.
Yeah, they're grown, doing great. So.
And that's nice.
Yeah, it
do
is
they
nice.
do they ever ask you about what you're doing now, or they
they're
just
involved.
know it because they're always involved in it?
Yeah, they're involved. They come to the special events and they understand. 2 of them worked at the facility for a short time, and so they understand the dynamic of the Spiritual Life Center, Ellsworth Correctional Facility. So they love it. They love to come out and see the play. Our granddaughter comes out and sees it, and she has a good time. So.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Speaking of special events, we had the one I came out for. I don't know, do you call it the Christmas celebration?
Yes.
The one, and man, you had some real talent there, musical talent, and those guys were having such a blast. Who coordinates and organizes all of that?
Well, the music part, the men themselves do that. Sometimes our assistant, she'll step out and say, "That's off key, that's pitchy," you know. She'll do that part, but the men themselves organize that. They run everything through us. We want to keep it within the lanes, you know. And Chaplain Valier does a good job of helping with that as well. But they do it, and from the lighting to the sound to the instruments, they take care of all that equipment, and then they orchestrate the music and break all that down. So.
Man, they did an awesome job, and I could tell with the guitar player. I saw him, and boy, he was so excited to be playing the guitar. Your keyboard player was legitimately a very good keyboard player, and he was very proud of the music, of how that was integrating together. We got to cut away and take a break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Stories That Matter. I'm your host, Doug Thompson, with my special guest, Chaplain Dale Bailey from the prison in Ellsworth. You know, and we've been talking throughout this show, and there's a lot more that we're going to talk about, because we're going to do a second show, and this isn't a divided part, but you'll see a second show that'll follow. So when you see one on television, and by the way, this appears on the Eagle system across the state of Kansas, northern half, southern half of Nebraska, and then part of Colorado. And it's rebroadcast. Each show is rebroadcast 5 times throughout that week, because there's people that work nights and some different time slots. And so on the next show, we're going to talk about some other things. But tell me where the funding came from for this Spiritual Life Center. I understand the offenders built the facility, physically did a lot of that work with some instructions. Where'd the money come from for the product?
All the money for the Spiritual Life Center came from private donations. 1998, the nonprofit group started our 501c3 called the Spiritual Life Center Fund. We have an outside board of directors. They oversaw the fundraising, the chaplain, the warden, everybody was involved in fundraising. So it all came from churches, businesses, corporations, individuals. They all donated for the materials to build that building.
Wow. What was the cost, you know?
With the materials and then furnishing it and building all the equipment inside is just under $500,000.
Man, that's tremendous, and that's a beautiful facility.
Yeah.
Hope you've enjoyed this show. Thanks for watching. See you next time on Stories That Matter.